Hi everyone, and today I'm going to be talking about aesthetic art and what makes art aesthetic in the first place, and the definition of aesthetic and what makes art aesthetic. And this is a different type of video. I've never seen anyone make a video about this before, and it's just something that's been bothering me, so I'm going to talk about it. And how I'm going to start this off is by asking, what is the definition of aesthetic? That's what I was wondering. And so what did I do? I decided to Google it, as any normal person does. And the definition of aesthetic is concern with beauty or the appreciation of beauty. And according to the dictionary, it also said that all art is aesthetic and all art has an aesthetic. And an example of aesthetic art is cubism. At least that's what I saw in there, is that they considered cubism to be aesthetic. And I just want to talk about what makes art aesthetic and why it almost seems that everyone who makes quote unquote aesthetic art has similar art styles, at least on Instagram, not really on YouTube, but on Instagram. Why does almost every aesthetic art style look the same? So, the first question I am going to answer is what makes art aesthetic. And according to Google, because I didn't cite my sources like an idiot, I just did a quick Google search, was that what it said online was that what makes art aesthetic is the principles of art and the principles of design. And those are balance, emphasis, rhythm, proportion, pattern, unity and contrast, along with color, line, shape, value, and texture. So, next is, why does every aesthetic art style look the same on Instagram, while on YouTube it's a little bit more diverse, and what makes these different accounts art aesthetic? First, I'm going to be talking about the Instagrammers, and I just want to say a quick disclaimer. I am not bashing any of these artists or their art styles, because all of them are incredibly talented and they get all the likes and the followers that they deserve. And the first Instagrammer I'm going to talk about is Sapzu. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I would consider their art to be aesthetic. I'll try and insert a few examples of each artist that I talk about in the editing process, so hopefully there will be some that pop up here. Okay, so their account started March 13th, I think. Let me scroll down to their first post. But March 14th was when their account first started, and they now have 47.8 thousand followers and only 54 posts. And what I think makes their art aesthetic is style. First of all, they have a very diverse style, and its big eyes seems to be a main characteristic, and how they color and how they shade. It seems like they shade using blues and purples, which really contrast against the bright colors that they use for their characters. And they also like to draw on stuff that's kind of popular and talk about different aesthetics, which also makes the account aesthetic in the first place. And I see their account all over my search page on Instagram, and they have awesome art, and I really like their style. And what I think makes it aesthetic is, like I said, the style in the first place. And if we're gonna go based off of what makes art aesthetic in the first place, I would say for sure that it would be unity and contrast, proportions, which, like, their proportions are exaggerated, which is what makes it interesting to look at, color, line for sure, and value because of how they shade. And I think that is just a few of the things that make their art aesthetic and what makes it different from other accounts. So the next account I'm going to be talking about is meg.icarp on Instagram. And I've actually seen quite a few of her posts, and she has an interesting art style as well. Like I said, I'll make sure to insert some pictures. So, what she draws is they have all the same subject matter. It's something that I noticed with these accounts, is that they all have the same subject matter as each other, which I think is what makes them get so many likes, is that they all draw similar characters, but they all have very different art styles, but they all fit into the aesthetic category. And the thing that makes Meg.iCarp style different is that she seems to use a more warmer color palette, kind of like I do. I love using warm colors for my art, and I like to use lots of reds when shading, and I don't really use cool colors often when shading, but I do think that they could look super cool because I use cool colors in this drawing, and it looked really good. Personally, it might be something I'll have to try more. But something about their art style is that they use warmer colors, and they almost seem to have a more simplistic style that doesn't have a lot of detail, and it's more boxy, but it looks really great. And their account started September 5th, 2017, and as of now, she has 126k followers on Instagram. And what I think makes her art style so aesthetically pleasing would be line, color, shape, and how she draws her proportions, along with, I don't know, that's all I can come up with. So I think that is what makes her art aesthetic. And I'm going to talk about my last Instagram account that I'm going to be mentioning in this video. So my last Instagram account that I'm going to talk about is _ pizza bacon. That's a fun username. And her account started September 2nd, 2017. And she, as of today, has 391k followers on Instagram, which is insane. The most out of the two that I've mentioned already. And I would definitely consider their art to be aesthetic because of the clothing choices that they use, the makeup. I think that they also have an interesting style. It's way more painterly than the other two accounts that I've mentioned so far. So her account, like I said, it just has really like a nice color palette. There you go. It has a nice color palette, which is what I think makes it aesthetic when it comes to the few things that I mentioned earlier when it comes to the principles of drawing and design. She has a nice color palette that she uses, and the texture that she puts into the clothing is crazy. Like, I feel like I know exactly what the clothing that they draw their characters in feels like. I feel like I could be wearing it, which I think is cool. And their style, like I said, it's more painterly, which I think is what makes it different from the other two art styles that I've mentioned previously. They also started a new thing where they draw characters blinking, which I think is what made their account blow up so much, is they would make their art blink, the characters blink. I'll see if I can insert a example of this. So, yeah, I think that is what makes their art so interesting. They also draw incredible eyes, and they put a lot of detail into their drawings, which is another thing I think is different from the two previous accounts and what makes it stand out. But these accounts all started like around a similar time, except for the first one. And I think that that's interesting. And like I said, they all have similar subject matter, but they all have different styles. And I think that is part of the reason why they're so big on Instagram. It's just because they draw the stuff that's popular and is similar. Like, is similar to what is popular at the moment. And I think that is what makes their account so big and aesthetic. But I don't have a problem with that. Just so you know, I don't. I actually get inspiration from their accounts, and I think that they're all incredible artists. And now I'm going to be talking about the YouTubers. So the first YouTuber I could think of when it came to aesthetic art was Lavender Town. Okay? I like watching her channel. It's actually what kind of got me into wanting to do digital art in the first place, besides drawing with waffles. So, Lavender Town has an interesting style. I don't think I've ever seen anyone with the same style to her, and it's almost nearly impossible to mimic. I've tried. And I think that that is what makes her style so fun and different. And definitely what makes her art aesthetic is proportions, because her eyes, she draws eyes really big, and she includes um pictures sometimes in the eyeballs, which is what I think makes her art so distinguishable, is the eyes. And she also has a lot of line. When it comes to line, she uses different line widths. Like some lines are thin, some are thick, and I think that's what also makes it just stand out against other art styles, besides the attention to detail that she puts into them and high contrast that she puts in her pictures. So they're very well balanced, and she puts emphasis on the eyes, and she puts in detail with a lot of her art. And I think that's what makes her so talented and makes her art different. The next artist I'm going to be talking about is Casey Golden. And she is another YouTuber that I discovered probably around a year ago, I think. And her art style is just so fun. I love it so much. I don't think I can mimic it if I tried to, because her art style, what I love about it is that it's simplistic, but it looks amazing. And she puts in a lot of detail to shading, and she uses neutrals most of the time and warm colors and cool colors. She does great color palette wise, which is what I think makes her art so aesthetic. It's because of color, definitely line. She uses different line widths, and she has a fun art style in the first place. She draws characters so different from each other, which is what I think makes her art style so fun and distinguishable from other ones. She likes to use a lot of patterns, and she puts in details on the clothes of the characters and on the characters themselves. She puts a lot of emphasis on noses, which is something I noticed, because her noses always look completely different from each other, and they always stand out from each other. Like some characters will have huge noses, some will have tiny noses, and it's just so fun. I love her art style. Proportions are another big thing. She kind of draws her art. The proportions are kind of squishy. I don't know if that's the best word to describe it, squishy, but her art style, her characters just look squishy and short, stubby, and I love it. I think that is what makes it distinguishable from other people's art styles and what makes it so fun. So definitely for her, it is line, color, texture is another big one, and shape. I can include shape because her characters all have different shapes on them. Some are more rounded, some are more angular. Same goes for noses. And she just has great proportions and balance with those proportions and shapes, line, and color. I think that that is what makes her art aesthetically pleasing and makes it so nice to look at, besides the fact that she uses a bunch of different mediums, so you never know what to expect. And I have no idea when Casey started on YouTube, but on Instagram, I know she has 505k followers. I'm gonna have to see how many subscribers. Okay, I cut myself off, but how many subscribers she has on YouTube is 1.16 million subscribers, so she's kind of a bigger content creator, but I mean, she deserves it. Her art style is just so fun, and I think that it's great, and it's what kind of wanted me to try watercolor again after deciding that watercolor was terrible and I sucked at it. So that is going to be the end of this video. Um, that's just a few examples that I could think of aesthetic art styles, and just I really wanted to talk about aesthetic art styles and art aesthetics that you just find everywhere on Instagram. I mostly see them on Instagram than YouTube, but there are YouTubers who have them. But yeah, that's all for this video. Hope you all have an amazing day, and goodbye.